Jenin, Israeli military launches major operation in West Bank city military raid as Tel Aviv attack injures several people. Israeli forces launch biggest military operation in West Bank's Jenin since 2002. Israel's military pressed on Tuesday with its biggest incursion into the occupied West Bank in 20 years, while several people were injured in an attack on Tel Aviv as fears grew of a significant escalation after months. Hundreds of Israeli troops, some traveling in armored vehicles and bulldozers, entered Jenin on Monday backed by drone strikes. Jenin is a small city in the hilly, far north of the West Bank, near the border with Israel, and contains a teeming, concrete and cinder block refugee camp by the same name housing some 14,000 people. The Israeli military has used combat helicopters in the occupied West Bank for the first time in years, as an arrest operation in Jenin encountered unexpectedly fierce Palestinian resistance. The heavy fighting intensified calls by settler leaders to call for a broader military campaign in the West Bank. Israeli soldiers also killed during 10 days of intense fighting. Hundreds of Israeli soldiers were still operating inside Jenin on Monday night, more than 48 hours after the operation began. Israeli forces launched a large-scale attack on the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank on Monday morning. The attacks, both air and ground operations, resulted in the killing and injury of dozens of Palestinians. Several Palestinians, most of whom were teenagers, were killed in Jenin, according to the health ministry. A group of Palestinian journalists were trapped and caught in a line of fire on a Jenin rooftop during an Israeli raid and the ensuing gun battle on Monday, and were later evacuated by the ambulance services. Israeli forces reportedly prevented ambulance crews from assisting two of them, while the third man, who was shot by several bullets, was taken to hospital for treatment. Several thousand Palestinians have fled their homes in the Jenin refugee camp in the north of the occupied West Bank after the launch of the biggest Israeli military operation in the area in 2 decades, Palestinian officials say. There are about 3,000 people who have left the camp so far, the Jenin deputy governor, Kamal Abu al-Raw, told the AFP news agency on Tuesday, adding that arrangements were being made to house refugees in schools and other shelters in Jenin city. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees said many people in the camp needed food, drinking water, and milk powder as the fighting raged for a second day. There were hours-long queues at checkpoints on Highway 60, the main north-south route in the West Bank, as those attempting to access or leave Jenin, including at least one ambulance, were forced onto sometimes unpaved mountain roads. In photos, residents returned, assessed damage in Jenin refugee camp after Israeli forces attack. Palestinians returning to the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank have been met with scenes of widespread destruction following the Israeli army's 2-day raid. The destruction is all around. The roads have been ripped up. Cars have been pushed aside by the bulldozers, just absolutely wrecked. The thing to notice here is just how much damage has been done. How homes have been absolutely wrecked. Maybe not destroyed because there's the possibility they might be able to rebuild them, but the whole area is in an absolute and total mess.